2 days ago, tragedy struck the city of Ahmedabad, an event so devastating it sent shockwaves across the entire nation. An Air India aircraft, moments after taking off, plunged into disaster. What followed were scenes of chaos and heartbreak, images so haunting they'll stay with you forever. But how did this happen? What went wrong in those critical seconds after takeoff? And could this tragedy have been prevented? In today's video, we uncover the full story, from takeoff to impact, as we piece together the final moments of this ill-fated flight. June 12, 2025, Ahmedabad, Gujarat, India. A tragic day that will forever haunt Indian aviation history. At the heart of the city lies Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport, a major hub with a single runway stretching 3,505 meters, nearly 11,500 feet long. That afternoon, Air India Flight 171 was preparing for departure. The scheduled flight was packed with 230 passengers, including 11 children, 2 of whom were so young they were less than a year old. Among the passengers was a high-profile figure, the former Chief Minister of Gujarat. Alongside them were 2 experienced pilots and 10 crew members, bringing the total number of souls on board to 242. It was an unbearably hot day. Temperatures soared between 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. Ground staff worked quickly, loading luggage into the cargo hold as the crew performed their final checks. Then came the clearance from air traffic control. Runway 23, cleared for takeoff. The aircraft was slowly pushed back, then taxied toward the runway, and soon, the engines roared. The massive Boeing 787 surged down the runway, gaining speed, and moments later, it lifted off the ground and began climbing steadily. 100 feet, 200 feet. By the time it reached 400-500 feet, something went horribly wrong. The aircraft suddenly stopped climbing. Instead of gaining altitude, it began to descend rapidly. No one knew why. No distress signal, no warning. Within just 30 seconds of takeoff, Flight 171 struck the roof of BJ Medical College. The impact tore off the tail, which lodged into the building. The rest of the aircraft smashed through nearby houses, breaking apart on impact, and because the fuel tanks were still full. And then, disaster struck. Just seconds after the crash, a massive fireball exploded into the sky. Flames and thick black smoke engulfed the area, turning the peaceful afternoon into a living nightmare. Locals who witnessed the horror quickly pulled out their phones, capturing the terrifying scenes on video. Many of them even sent those clips to me, and I swear to you, watching them sent chills down my spine. What I saw was beyond devastating. The images were so graphic, so disturbing, that I can't even show them here. Firefighters rushed to the scene, but the flames were out of control. Despite their best efforts, it took hours to put the fire out. The rescue operation dragged on, while all around, you could hear nothing but screams and chaos. I've always said this in my videos. People don't usually die in the crash itself. It's the fire afterward that traps them, burns them alive, and leaves no way out. And in a blaze this intense, even those who try to help are helpless. Because until the fire is contained, no one can get close enough to rescue anyone. And by the time the flames are under control, it's already too late. According to the latest reports, out of 242 people on board, only 1 person miraculously survived. They escaped with minor injuries and managed to walk out of the wreckage on their own 2 feet. Yes, you heard that right. Just 1 survivor. And honestly, it feels like nothing short of a miracle. As I record this video, this is the only confirmed survivor. Authorities now believe that 269 people have lost their lives in this crash, including 28 people on the ground who were caught in the explosion when the aircraft slammed into a college building. This is the first time in history that an Air India Boeing 787 has been completely destroyed in a crash. We pray for every soul lost in this tragedy. May they rest in peace. As for the destruction on the ground, the aircraft crashed into the hostel wing of a medical college, ripping through multiple campus buildings, and the fire that followed was so devastating. Not even a blade of grass was left untouched. At the time of this report, 169 bodies have been recovered, including that of a 40-year-old man. There was only 1 survivor from the crash, a British citizen seated on 11A, just ahead of the emergency exit. His brother was also on board that flight, but tragically, he didn't make it. And with him, hundreds of heartbreaking stories were buried in the wreckage. Lives that began the day with hope, only to end in silence. After watching countless clips circulating on social media, analyzing eyewitness footage, and reviewing flight data, I decided to dig deeper, to piece together what really happened. What I'm about to share is the result of that deep investigation. And while the official report may differ slightly when it's eventually released, the facts I've uncovered are based on available evidence and real-time data. So let's start at the beginning with Flight Radar 24. This global aircraft tracking system receives real-time data from the ADS-B transponder on board every commercial plane, capturing the aircraft's speed, altitude, position, everything. In the case of Air India Flight 171, Flight Radar 24 successfully tracked the aircraft from taxiing to takeoff, but suddenly, just as the plane climbed to 625 feet, the signal vanished. Now here's the strange part. There are no tall buildings or obstructions at that altitude near the airport that could block or interfere with the radar, which leads us to one conclusion. Something went wrong inside the aircraft. It's highly likely that the aircraft's transponder stopped transmitting, and that only happens if there's a serious electrical failure. And where does a plane get its electrical power? From its engines. So, what if there was an engine failure? What if the source of all onboard systems, including safety mechanisms, collapsed mid-air within seconds of takeoff? That could explain the sudden radar loss, and perhaps the beginning of this horrific tragedy. When a plane loses electrical power, its transponder shuts down. That's a given. It could be due to a sudden electrical failure, or something much worse. But here's what's important. An electrical failure alone doesn't cause a plane to crash. We have clear proof of that in the videos captured by bystanders. In those clips, you can clearly see the aircraft slowly losing altitude, drifting downward, not plunging suddenly. That can only mean one thing. The engines weren't producing enough power. Now look closely at one of the videos. You'll spot something sticking out from beneath the fuselage. It's hard to make out, but it looks like a ram air turbine. A small emergency propeller that only deploys when both engines fail. If that truly was the ram air turbine, then there's no doubt about it. Flight 171's engines failed, both of them, just seconds after takeoff. All signs point to a major malfunction well before the crash, possibly complete engine failure. By now you might be thinking, is this just a theory? No, we have solid confirmation. Just hours after the crash, air traffic control revealed that Flight 171 sent out a Mayday call, a distress signal used only when a crash is imminent, which means the pilots knew something had gone horribly wrong. And they knew it early, possibly while still over the final stretch of the runway. But this raises a serious question. If the pilots knew, why didn't they abort takeoff? Why didn't they stop the plane before it lifted off? To understand that, we need to talk about critical takeoff speeds. Because a plane doesn't just decide to fly, it goes through 3 vital speed checkpoints before it's airborne. Before any airplane takes off, it has to pass through 3 critical speed checkpoints, V1, VR, and V2. V1 is known as the decision speed. Up until this point, if anything goes wrong, an engine fault, a system failure, the pilots can still hit the brakes and abort the takeoff safely. But once the aircraft crosses V1, it's committed to takeoff. At this point, the plane accelerates further and reaches VR speed. This is when the nose lifts off the ground and the aircraft attempts to become airborne. Then comes V2 speed, the safety speed. Even if one engine fails at this stage, the aircraft can still fly with the remaining engine. This is the safest zone to handle an emergency right after liftoff. But here's the danger zone, VR speed. If something goes wrong at VR, like an engine failure, the aircraft is going too fast to stop safely on the runway, but not fast enough to lift off and climb using just one engine. This is the worst possible moment for a failure. Neither can the pilots abort, nor can they safely continue the takeoff. Now, when we apply this to Air India Flight 171, it becomes clear. If an engine failure did occur, it likely happened at exactly that critical VR moment. The aircraft was near the end of the runway, and that's when the pilot made a Mayday call. That confirms something was already going very wrong before the crash, and that's also the moment the aircraft's ADS-B transponder went offline, suggesting a complete systems failure. All these clues line up perfectly with one theory. The plane suffered a critical engine failure during VR speed, leaving the pilots completely helpless. To make matters worse, it was a hot summer day. The temperature at the airport was between 35 to 40 degrees and 104 degrees, and the aircraft had been sitting on the tarmac, exposed to the sun for a long time. Now let's talk about something critical, the fuel temperature. On a scorching hot day, with outside temperatures ranging between 35 to 40 degrees, the aircraft sat exposed on the tarmac for an extended period. That intense heat may have significantly increased the temperature of the fuel inside the tanks, and that could explain why the fire spread so rapidly. There was absolutely no delay after impact. But there's more we need to observe. And these are details visible in the crash footage, though they can only be confirmed by official investigation. Watch closely. During takeoff, if we focus on the aircraft's wings, it appears that the flaps might have been set to 0. Now, normally, flaps are extended to position 1 or 2 during takeoff to help the plane generate lift more efficiently. But in this case, at Ahmedabad Airport, the runway is over 11,000 feet long. So yes, technically, a Boeing 787 can manage a takeoff on such a long runway with minimal flap settings. Still, there's something important to note here. The video circulating online appears to be filmed off a screen, maybe from a flight monitor, which means the flap setting isn't very clear. It's possible that the flaps were set to minimum, not exactly 0. But here's the thing. If the pilots had actually attempted a takeoff with 0 flaps, an alarm would have sounded inside the cockpit, and no experienced pilot would ignore that. So realistically, I don't think they tried to take off with flaps at 0. But here's the shocking part. Look at the landing gear. As the aircraft began to struggle for lift and the drag increased, the speed kept dropping, yet the landing gear was never retracted. This suggests one of two things. Either the pilots were overwhelmed, possibly panicking, hearing alarms, trying to troubleshoot multiple failures, or they simply ran out of time. Even if they had retracted the gear, it probably wouldn't have saved the aircraft. But that one moment reveals just how quick the situation escalated. And now the biggest question, if the engine had failed, what caused it? So what exactly happened, and how? According to eyewitnesses, multiple explosions were heard during takeoff. At the same time, smoke was seen coming from one of the engines. This could indicate a possible bird strike, or perhaps a serious technical failure in the engine. Friends, I hope this breakdown helped you understand the tragic sequence of events. But the truth is, there's still a lot we don't know yet. We may have to wait until the official investigation report, expected later this year, to get a full and confirmed picture of what really went wrong. When that report is released, you can be sure I'll cover it in detail. For now, that's all we know. If any major update comes in, I'll be back with another video to cover it. So make sure you stay connected with us. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. If not, feel free to dislike it. But in either case, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because here, there's always something valuable to learn. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and stay curious.